unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Okay, Rutendo, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All
I need
right.
something for thingy this.
Okay, we're live,
I need to.
Rutendo. We're already live now because I had to wait and wait and wait, and now we're just live. How are you doing?
I'm great. I still haven't fully prepared. Hold on.
I know, don't worry. Okay, I can give you a couple of minutes while I make some quick arrangements. Is that okay?
Yes, please
All
do.
right, I'm just happy you're here. Okay. Good evening, good afternoon, good night, and wherever you're watching from, dear Pan Africanists. This is another beautiful day on the Pan African Daily TV and for Africans worldwide. I'm not quite sure if it is also a beautiful day out there in Uganda. If it is the case, then we are grateful. But like this morning, we just woke up and saw fire on the continent. We saw rioting and uprisings. And guess where that was taking place? Actually, in Sudan. In Sudan, where we are supposedly to be having Dr. Tony Jaja tonight with us, but he couldn't because of internet cut. Internet cut is becoming the usual weapon now, when there are uprisings on the continent where African people is. Normally, in the diaspora is different. I mean, we're still going to get access to internet even when they put a knee on our neck in the broad daylight, so it doesn't even warrant to do something again, when it regards Black people or Africans in the dark. Yes, but on the mother continent, it's still happening. That's why we can have Tony Jaja here. I don't know what is happening out there. We want reliable information on the situation in Sudan, and of course, from what I know, that there's been a transition government that has just taken place on the continent there in Sudan, and but we also know that there had been challenges prior even to this transition. The prices just suddenly skyrocketed, yes, and the dollar became very expensive, shortage in fuel, people could not have buy even food, things became so expensive. And now we begin to ask, and that's why I'm happy that I'm having Rutendo here with us tonight. Let's just find out what kind of invisible hand should be going on there. But before we get into our conversation, while we're giving our brother Rutendo
Okay.
some time to curate and to make his makeup before he comes here, I want to salute all of you that are joining the stream. How have your lives been out there? Have you been coping with the situation? I know it's not easy for all African people and for humanity worldwide. There's really been, after the COVID, a lot of challenges. Whatever situation you find yourself in, please, we just wish you well. What we advocating and what we wish for all of us is just the gratitude for life. There's nothing better than peace. Just being at peace with yourself, love yourself first, and then love every other person as much as you can. These days we even love our enemies. So we have enemies, but we are obliged as humanity and people and humans on earth to just love one another for the sake of peace. So yes, talking about that situation, I'm really happy about this government that is on the transition, because despite all the uprisings that we are seeing, correspondents that I tried to reach out in Sudan, I don't know what Rutendo will say about this, is giving us very information that despite all the uprisings and what we're seeing, the agitations, the burning, there've been death, of course, there've been lots of lives out there, but that we should remain calm, because the government that is in place now wants no war. They just want peace and dialogue. And that's why we even think that they're really provoking them to get to a point where they say, peace is not possible. You know what? Because even in our private lives, no matter how good you are, probably, you'll be pushed to the wall that you become something else. You begin to change without knowing. So we pray that that should not be the situation with Sudan. They should stay calm, and our condolences to all the lives that have lost. Yes. All right. So if you're watching for the first time, please make sure you click and subscribe. If you're watching on our Facebook pages, make sure you give us thumbs up and let us know where you're watching from. I know there's been a lot of people on the Pan African Daily TV Facebook page, which has become the most viral and vibrant pages in recent times. I mean, you can imagine, Rutendo, the last time you were here, I told you, you remember the day they brought down that page because of your big mouth, and me and you were sitting here in studio, and the first one went down in front of us. So, but now we had to, put the power out there again, continue our big mouthing, and build another one. And just in 3 months, we're having close to 250,000 followers. And statistics, and Patrick, our social media expert, is giving me a lot of good feedback that in the next couple of months we should be reaching 500,000 on that page. So I want to congratulate all of you that are watching there, and that you're doing a very incredible job. Keep on spreading the news. Now we want to digest and have a cool conversation today with our brother sitting right here. Like I said, the big brain, the big brain on the continent. Rutendo, you sent me a text saying something like you're struggling to ship something from South Africa to Gambia. What is it?
Yes, I've got a guy in Gambia. He's starting a chicken farm, and he wants to create his own feed. And he would like to feed his chickens organic, non-GMO maize. And so he decided to reach out to me to find out if I can provide him with that maize. And it's a brother that met me on this show through you.
Oh.
He wanted me to assist him with starting a poultry farm where he will use breeds that are endemic to Africa, but he wants to mix them to create broiler meat, because that is very popular where he is. So we had a discussion talking about how it is that the current broiler market is kind of monopolized by two breeds of broiler that come from a company called Cobb and another one called Ross. And these breeds are the predominant breeds that are found throughout the world, created by these two American companies. And what has happened is that they've monopolized the broiler meat industry, and they have made these broilers, they've continuously bred them and genetically manipulated them for them to produce bigger breasts with more meat, but they're more susceptible to diseases, and the meat doesn't taste so good. So the question that this gentleman had for me is, how do we get chicken to taste like it used to taste back in the days, and how do we do it in a sustainable manner? So the discussion came up where I was telling him that broilers are actually a breed that are created by crossbreeding a number of chickens that are in the market. So what you need to do is you need to start mixing and creating your own breed that has the characteristics that you want more. So a lot of people have, the commercial companies have gone for meat and weight, whereas a lot of Africans still feel that in as much as the meat might be much on the chicken, they are more interested in the taste much more than they're interested in the meat. So that's where we got talking with this gentleman. And so within that talking, we said it's not only genetics that matter, but it's also the food that you feed. And also not feeding your chickens with chemicals or steroids. And so that's how we got talking. That's how we got talking about him growing his own food. And so we are talking about exporting organic, or let's not call it organic, it's the wrong word, but open pollinated varieties or heirloom seeds that are traditional, seeds that have been developed over thousands of years to become the kind of seeds that can grow in a particular area with particular resistance to certain diseases, but also non-genetically modified and non-hybrid, to allow the farmer to reuse the seeds and to improve the seeds over time. So that's what I'm trying to get to him. And just trying to get these seeds from South Africa to Gambia is a nightmare. The costs of sending these seeds from South Africa to Gambia are quite prohibitive. And this is a very big problem when we're looking at the fact that we're going into this Africa free trade area, that we want to be able to trade with each other. The mandate of the Africa Free Trade Area is that they want to allow easier trade between African nations, because right now Africans only trade with each other 2% of the trade that takes place on the African continent, because Africans are buying seeds from overseas. And this is something that we would like to change.
Rutendo, this is disturbing. You know why? Because I know the brother called me and had tried to explain something like that. And I just went on the research the same time, and I tried to reach out to Gambia, and I just reach out to find out what is going on. And the stories I heard was I don't know how I can say, it's like Gambia is now in Europe. You understand? That's how crazy it is. Like, it's even cheaper to reach out to France or to Germany than Gambia on the continent from South Africa.
Correct. And the problem that is there is that we haven't been trading with each other on the African continent. So some of those logistics, some of those channels of communication, channels of transportation have not been established. And they haven't been established because the Gambians are closer to Europe. So they have been trading with Europe much more than they trade with the rest of Africa. And we have not been able to create transport and logistics value chains within Africa because of not trading with each other. That's why we don't even have roads that link our countries together, because Africa has been more trading with Europe as a template of the colonial system and the colonial, let's call it the colonial system that has been left behind. And the colonial system was not for Africa to trade with each other. The colonial system was for Africa to produce, and everything that produced in Africa to be taken out of Africa to go to Europe. We were supposed to produce raw materials, we're supposed to produce resources, we're supposed to produce agricultural products that would then leave Africa and go to the Western markets. And by so doing, African trade links, African ports, African rail links, African roads were not established. African communication systems were not established. And so that's what this generation has got to be working towards, where we say that we're not just going to be trading in this Africa free trade, but we're actually going to be creating the infrastructure that is going to be critical for us to be able to trade with each other.
Wow. So the boundaries are real, as a matter of fact. They're real, because it's easier to leave Gambia, cross over to the Mediterranean. It's easier to leave even Spain, cross over in North Africa, but it's so difficult to leave South Africa to Nigeria or to Gambia. That's quite interesting. And I think that's another challenge, dear Pan-Africanists and Africans, and you, I see even political analysts here with us on the show, to actually begin to see the kind of challenges that we're talking about in terms of the political Africa and the conflict Africa, which is our topic for now, for today. Rutendo, it is going to be quite challenging. I can already see it happening. It's not just the continental free trade. You are like a clear example. If you didn't have to try this, we'll not be talking about it. On most of the time, we've been talking about we need airlines or seaports to leave the Caribbean back to the continent or the Americas. Did you ever know that on the continent we're having such challenges?
Yes, I did. I do read quite a bit. I travel quite a bit, so I did know the challenges that we have on the African continent. Even when you go for holiday, you want to go for holiday from South Africa into a next door neighboring country like Mozambique, and you want to go to Pemba, or you want to go to northern Mozambique. It's not easy. It's very difficult. And I remember we went for a holiday. We were going to Pemba. The aeroplane that we were using had a problem and was grounded in Nampula, where we had a stopover. And just trying to get transportation from Nampula to Pemba was very difficult. And when we eventually got a person that was going to give us a taxi ride, so basically a cab from Nampula to Pemba, it was a terrible ride, you know, because there's no other transport going there. We had this taxi driver who was speeding. Beautiful country, unbelievable journey that we took, but it's a journey that most people will never enjoy because of the lack of infrastructure. And they were developing the road, though. They were building a road between Pemba and Nampula, which was very good. However, I did start to understand the challenges that we've got. When you go to places like Malawi, they are now improving the roads, Zambia, Malawi, Zimbabwe, the SADC region. But before it wasn't like that. Going into Congo, trying to come from Lubumbashi to the capital city, Kinshasa, it's a nightmare, you know? And these are the kind of things that we would like to sort out. Right now, I'm also sending seeds plus organic fertilizer, which is bat guano, from Zimbabwe to Zambia. But the person that is in Zambia is also expecting seeds, these very same organic, open pollinated seeds or heirloom seeds from South Africa, to then be grouped together with the organic fertilizer that's in Zimbabwe to go to Zambia. But now, Zambian trucks are no longer going through Zimbabwe. They are now going through the Kazungula road that has been created that goes through Botswana instead of Zimbabwe. So right now, where we used to have a truck that could collect the seeds here, collect the fertilizer in Zimbabwe, and take it to Zambia, it's no longer possible. I now need 2 separate trucks, which increases the cost of the person that we're trying to do. So these are the challenges we're getting to do business on the African continent. And I believe that it is a challenge that this generation has got to solve. And we have to solve it. We have to fix it. Because when I went to Europe, I was able to travel 6 countries in one day without standing at a single border, traveling on trains that were moving at 320 kilometers per hour with ease. And I was traveling with lawyers. A lawyer, I remember when I was leaving the Netherlands, there was a lawyer that got on the train with me, and he was going to work in Germany. I was going to end up in Italy. And I made that journey in one day. So these are things that we need to fix on the African continent. The capital is there, the resources are there. We just have to learn to invest back home, and we have to learn to invest in the right things, while our governments and institutions in Africa need to work hard to create reliable, dependable, and honest institutions that when people invest their monies collectively, those monies can be put into the investment ventures that those people want, and ventures that can actually create jobs and create communication and infrastructure that Africans need in order to come back home and to invest their resources on home-biased investment that's targeted at growing the African continent.
Rutendo, to be honest with you, bro, each time you come here and we're holding this conversation, it just opens up, and I keep asking. I see things differently, and I know the visitors or our viewers are also asking the same question. It's like we need to create another Africa where we even need to create the route. For instance, you're just talking, and even when I spoke with Gambia, and I realized, like, it seems as if we would have to do a trip on all the African countries to even retrack which roads or which travel or which channels or what is where. I mean, like, you're talking about getting seeds even from South Africa to go to the others. So it's just like even the plants are brain drain on the country. You know, where do we start from? Creating infrastructure? Should we rely only, or should we even really ask our researchers to start even tracking some roads, how to live from here to here, and what means? We have to create everything, isn't it?
I don't think we need to create everything, because when we look at the systems you're talking about, those are colonial systems. These seeds that are scarce on the continent, and some of the seeds that we have on the continent, were actually brought here by the colonizers at a time where there was not even a single railway or single road for them to link these areas. But they were able to continuously spreading their multinationals. They were able to continuously spread their seeds throughout the continent in a manner that has us stuck with a system that is uniform and a system that is not African. So I think we need to look at the means and ways that they were able to logistically do what they did. We need to find out how they spread their system throughout the African continent, and then we need to replicate that to undo what it is that they did. So you look at the system of the issue of seeds. First of all, we have to be honest with each other and say that maize is not an African seed or crop. However, that does not mean we shouldn't grow maize on the continent, because everything else that we've got on the continent either came from somewhere else. You look at teff seeds came from Ethiopia, they came from, you look at millet came from the Indian subcontinent. So I think we still need to trade with each other. But while we're doing that, let's also make sure that we are growing what suits Africa best. We need to grow what is more nutritious on the African continent and mix it with whatever that we've got. And we also have to make sure that whatever is already in Africa, our African fruit, our African ginger, our African root crops, our African grasses, we need to popularize them. We need to promote them. They need to become fashionable to farm because they are healthy, first and foremost, and because they're able to sustain themselves in the climate and the climate change that is taking place on the African continent as we speak. Right now, we've got a tea. Right now, we've got a tea from Zimbabwe called Muzumbani. It's something that many of us Zimbabweans didn't like or enjoy when we were at home, but now it's in Holland. It's in Europe now because it is good for building the immune system, and it is apparently a very good immune booster for this COVID pandemic that we're meeting. So we need to promote a lot of that. And I know every African country has those kind of remedies, teas, herbs. We need to promote them and encourage young people to use them. And to break this, what the Europeans created, we have to start with the food. Because when they came to the African continent, if you hear the history of Zimbabwe, they started off by taking land. Once they took land, they created a land bank. After creating a land bank, they then began to change the seeds and bring European seeds to then begin to build their capacities and capabilities to take over the market. They created a grain marketing board. They created a meat marketing board. They created a cotton marketing board where they would have a central place where all that is produced by farmers will be bought, and they buy what is produced by black farmers at a lower price, and then what is produced by African farmers at by European farmers at a higher price. So the Africans were subsidizing the Europeans. So what we need to do is we need to organize our markets so that the demand for our products can be managed together with the supply. And that is what is lacking in a lot of African countries. We're still using the typical colonial system, and we haven't created a system that works for us to create a market where we can quantify supply and match it with demand so that our farmers can make money and our farmers do not lose crops in the fields.
If you look at the situation in Sudan, where the dollar has just risen and people don't have access even to food, which is causing the uprising. And then we're talking about the potential of this market. Now, the question is just like we asked on the topic, you know, a continent of opportunities, but also threat. Now we see the conflicts that are actually threat. I mean, let's forget about the invincible hand that is always there. It's maybe unpolite to say we forget, because we can never forget about it. It's part of us. We have to talk about it. But if you look at the threats and the opportunities, how do you think we can merge this? There's the war.
And it's interesting that you bring up Sudan, because in our last conversation, I brought up Sudan as one of the destinations where the Zimbabwean government sent the Zimbabwean army to help Sudan to stabilize a crisis that was there. And I did bring it up that it was Sudan, Chad, and Somalia are countries where the Zimbabwean government, all the way from the south, has gone to try and bring stability. So stability is very important on the African continent. And African nations need to make it a concerted effort to help bring stability on the African continent, not only militarily, but through trade, through business that can mitigate some of the problems that we see. So you look at the issue of Sudan with no food. It has to do with climate change. It has to do with warlords that control land and try to make other people, they try to create a feudal system in which other people are going to be dependent on a few people to produce food. This is one of the major things that we need to fight on the African continent. We need to fight feudalism that comes with Europeans. We need to fight feudalism that is coming with our own people. Land barons and people who control land while other people do not have land need to be eliminated. And this is something that we as African countries need to agree together, that we help to secure each other's countries with mutual defense pacts against landlords or warlords that try to control resources. We also need to make sure that with this fight for resources, we also fight for people's water rights. Because where there's land, there's usually water underneath. And where there's water underneath, there's usually wars that happen. And in the basin that Sudan, Chad, and the Sahara Desert exist, apparently they've got the biggest water resources in the world underneath the ground. How do we exploit those water resources to ensure that this climate change that is causing a water scarcity can be mitigated by us getting access to the water that is underneath these basins? Instead of us being obsessed about oil, I hear people talking about the Tau Dennis Basin where there's a lot of oil. Why don't we talk about water? Why don't we talk about water so that we give people food self-sufficiency before we start talking about cars and oils and monies that come from the oils? We need to reorganize Africa's priorities. And the Africa's priorities need to focus on the basics, giving people basic human rights, food, shelter, healthcare. I do talk about education as well, but I think it's more academic because some of the education that we call education on the African continent is not really education. We need to give our people true education. Education to make people understand how to use the land. Education to teach people how to use the water and how to manage it and how to be sustainable and how to produce. Right now, we've got many educated Africans who don't know how to grow food. Many educated Africans who are qualified at things that do not really make sense in Africa at this particular time if half of our populations are hungry. We need to make people understand that there is no point in being a doctor when you can't feed yourself. We need to make Africans understand that it is probably very important for each person to have a piece of land where even if you're working, you learn to produce a little bit for yourself. Absolutely. Even before you go to your profession. And I keep raising this point to Africans because Africans begin to adhere to this concept of economics that talks about the calculation of labor or value of time, where they say that why should we focus on agriculture when agriculture is a low return activity that spends and takes a lot of time, instead of us focusing on high return activities that make us money quickly and then we can buy the food from poorer countries. And I say to people, Germany in 1933 made the very same mistake. When the Germans were in 1933, they were producing the best equipment, the best machinery, the best tools. They were so technologically advanced that their biggest exports were industrial products and chemicals from companies like AG Farben. And they did not believe that they needed to focus on agriculture because they had so much technology to give to the world. And whatever technology they sold gave them a 1,000 times return to what a person that grows food gets. But when the Americans wanted to deal with Germany, when the Jewish population of Germany conspired with the West to bring down the Nazi government, the very first thing that the Americans and the Europeans did was to put Germany under sanctions. They ensured that they would not give it food and they would not give it oil. And so what happened is that the Germans had all this technology that could collect so much money, but when they were put under sanctions, nobody was buying German goods. No one was buying German tools. And so they could not generate the money to buy food. And with all the reserves of gold that they had, they couldn't buy food because no one could buy food from them because they were embargoed, they were blockaded, and there were sanctions. And that is what pushed Germany to attack Poland. It's what pushed Germany to attack Austria. It's what pushed Germany to eventually attack Russia. Because according to Hitler's Lebensraum, they needed to get access to oil in Baku. They needed to get access to fields and land in Poland, in Russia, to grow food in order to sustain Germany. So what it says is Germany was taken to war because of lacking food self-sufficiency. despite all the technology. Now, Africa must learn from that. If a country as industrialized and as sophisticated as Germany could be brought to its knees by food, and I say it was brought to its knees because till today, Germany is a colony of the United States with over 40,000 US soldiers on its soil because of the mistake they made by not giving themselves food self-sufficiency. And so we must learn from that. And we must learn from that by understanding that the reason why the Second World War happened is because the Americans, the British, needed their banks to take control of German banks and Japanese banks. And the way they could do it was by tightening the screws. And the screws were tightened in food. But you will see that the Americans, as sophisticated as they are, they continue to be a leader in agriculture. Yes, they produce terrible food, they produce poisons, they produce the food that is causing the diseases in their country, but at least they're trying to do something about producing food to feed their nation. It's just unfortunate that the culture is so contradictory that they will produce food, but they'll make it toxic that it kills their own people again, which ultimately is the same difference because they're killing themselves by biological warfare.
Rutendo, if we look at the current situation, and agriculture, like you said, had been the key, why even the colonies went? But why is it that at a particular time, if it is not really intentional and systematically designed to make agriculture a no-go for Africans, they stigmatize and stereotype the whole sector. And agriculture is always seen, or farming is seen as for the poor, for the less privileged. If you are a farmer, it's not cool, it's not sexy, and now, you know, there's no trends in that. But we are coming up, ladies and gentlemen, with a special show, and Rutendo sitting right here with other collaborators on the continent to make agriculture and farming one of the most prestigious sectors on the continent. Yes, we're going to get that slot right there and bring in all the farmers. And there you will understand that, you know what, you need to put off those jackets, go and hang them, because the only place where the money is, that they never told us, that they stereotyped it, that they blacklisted it, that they brainwashed us, was agriculture and farming. Now, particularly when it comes to women, and like women were getting married, the men have to do this and this. Rutendo, can you just give us a little bit of idea why you thought that this sector has been the underprivileged or the poor child of the continent, but they keep saying it's the minerals?
You see, for me, I'm blessed. I was born in Zimbabwe, where it was an economy built on agriculture. I was sent to a boarding school that belonged to farmers or in a farming community. So I grew up seeing the power of agriculture. The only difference, though, is that I could not make the link and association between agriculture and myself. Agriculture was for a superior breed of human being who was white. That was ingrained in my psychology subconsciously, and I didn't realize that. And so when I grew up, a lot of people always ask me why I left Zimbabwe. And I never really tell people why I left Zimbabwe, but I left Zimbabwe because I had a girlfriend who I had a relationship with. We broke up. When we broke up, out of being vindictive, she went to her uncle who was friends with my boss and told my boss, her uncle, that I was stealing tires from the company I was working for. It was a tire company. And my boss was having a headache of tires being stolen incessantly. And they were losing millions of dollars of tires that were being stolen by one of the salespeople that was working with us. Now, as a salesperson, I had a company car. I had it 24 hours a day. I could use it for whatever I needed. And she told her uncle that I was using my company car to steal the tires and take them to my uncle's company, because my uncle had a bus company. It was actually the biggest bus company in the country at the time, which wasn't true, but my bosses believed it. And then this went on to my resume. It went on to my references for work. And it got to a point where I would get a job offer. I remember I got 2 job offers at one time from Mentos and Microsoft. And when I got those 2 job offers, they called my former boss for a reference. And he told them that I had stolen tires. Now imagine how painful this is. I was alleged to have stolen tires. No investigation was taking place. But to cut a long story short, my reputation got so damaged that none of the employment agencies would touch me anymore. So I could not get a job anymore in Zimbabwe. At about the same time, I got an offer to come to South Africa. It was in the marketing advertising arena, where they needed people with a different look to give that exotic flavor to a budding television film industry in South Africa. And so that's how I got that offer. I didn't want to leave Zimbabwe, but because my reputation was so damaged, and because I felt that having a job was the only way to make it, the only way for me to make enough money to start my own business, I left the country. Now, why did I leave the country at a time where land reform was taking place? Why did I leave the country at a time Black empowerment was taking place? I never knew that I could become a miner. I never knew that I could be empowered. I believed that I needed a job. I needed to make as much money as possible. I needed to save the money and then go into business. And only when I'm in business can I get loans for business. And only to find out now that there was something called venture capitalism, where or vendor finance, where Black Zimbabweans who had ideas, or partners who were non-Zimbabwean who had ideas that they wanted to bring into Zimbabwe, could start companies, have the white partner finance to buy the stake or the 51% stake for the Black Zimbabwean. I didn't know that. I didn't know that you could get land. And when you get land, you look for partners or joint ventures with people that have the resources, the money to come onto land that you control, land that you've got a lease to as a Black Zimbabwean, and then they come and they bring their skills, they bring their technology, and they transfer the skills onto you and the workers, so that in another 10, 20 years' time, you control the farm and you are able to reproduce what these people were doing before. You could do the same with a company. Start a company, people bring in their technology, they transfer the technology. In another 10 to 20 years' time, you can replicate, which is what the Chinese have done. I didn't know that. And understand how deep this is. I've been to a school where I went to school with farmers. I went to school with white farmers, people who were in charge of the system. But they never taught me that as a Black man, I am a farmer too. I can farm too. They continued to give us the impression that we needed to search for jobs from those that own the farms and those that own the factories that process stuff from the farms, or those that mine the resources. So we were taught to give our resources to whites and then to be workers for them. And that is something that we need to fundamentally change today. Hence you see me doing what I do. I need to change the psychology of our young people so that they never get to feel like I felt, that my only choice, my only salvation was to leave the country to go and get a job so that I can get paper money if I want to be somebody.
Wow, this is deep, because it's the reality today. Like, we leave and leave the money on the continent and go into the coals and wear some titles and think that we're getting money while we just producing, and even taking the loans and think that we could do business. That's very interesting to learn. But Rutendo, you said something even about Germany. In Germany, I live really in the countryside, in the village where there are only farmers. As a matter of fact, I mean, my house is even in a farmer's compound where they do milk cows and products and egg and all this dairy. And you can really realize that I started really appreciating farming and agriculture by seeing the need that these people are the top people. They call them the rich, the bourgeois, like in France, they would say. And we never taught that. I also grew from the village where I thought my parents were poor because they were farmers, they were pastorials. You understand? So, but until I also traveled, and then I saw that farming is something of a noble career. And they even series here in Germany where farmers are, they call the farmers looking for wives because their job is so constrained and round on the clock that they even don't have time to date. So they make it so lucrative. When is it going to be that point on the continent where we think that young people would actually derive that need? I know a lot is going on.
Young people would develop the need when they see more successful farmers. They need to see people farming. They need to see people succeeding. But besides seeing people succeeding and farming, like I grew up seeing white farmers who were successful, they need to see their own peers being successful in farming, and they need to see people starting from scratch until they make it for them to be inspired. Because right now in Zimbabwe, we've got a number of black farmers that are doing amazing things. And because people never saw these black farmers starting from scratch, the assumption is that those black farmers are linked to the government, they are connected to politicians, they got the land for free, they got the inputs for free, they got the machinery for free, and so that's why they are making it. So as long as we continue to have those perceptions, there will continue to be a disconnect between the village child and the land, and the fact that that land can be a path to success. They need to see those people that have started from nothing, who start off with a little hectare of whatever product or crop, tomatoes. They go to market with that very first crop of tomatoes, and then they sell, make money, reinvest, and begin to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we need to sow. So we need to learn to make documentaries on the African continent. Our governments have got to learn to put resources in telling the African story. Mm-hmm. And they need to tell the African story that is accessible to every young person. Mm-hmm. Because when I try to promote Zimbabwean farming to Zimbabweans, many young Zimbabweans are quick to say, it's only for the elite. It's only for the politically connected. But I know so many stories of people that are not politically connected who are succeeding in farming. And it's also the same thing with the fact that when I got to a point of about to leave the country, we started hearing successful stories of children, of black families. There's a family called the Musariri family in Zimbabwe. They've been farming for generations. They were at a private school with white kids, and they were respected by white kids because their father had combine harvesters. Combine harvesters at a time when most white people were renting combine harvesters from other white people. The Musariris had been doing it, and they've been doing it successfully for a long time. When you go back in history, colonial history, there are renowned black farmers that were producing so much beef, so much cotton, and so much grain that they were rich and wealthy at that time. We don't have documentation about them, don't have books about them, don't have biographies about them. We do not make movies and stories about them. We need those stories. That is what is going to make farming sexy. It is going to put farming in the conscience of our people. And you need, even in our country, Zimbabwe, it was known as the Mutapa Empire. It was one of only 6 empires in Africa. So it is like Benin, it is like what do you call it? Ghana was, I'm forgetting the name. But these were empires of farmers. These were empires of people who were very productive. Nigeria, which was then built the Wall of Benin, was building the Wall of Benin, which is the biggest structure in the world, even bigger than the Great Wall of China. It was built by people who were successful, and societies that were successful, societies that became empires because of production of agricultural product and production of things like yam and palm oil. That history needs to be taught to our children in documentaries that they can watch on their cell phones. It needs to be taught to in our schools. These need to become our new heroes. This notion that we only look at stories and case studies of Bill Gates and case studies of people from Europe needs to end in Africa. And we need to make heroes the people that became the first billionaires in Africa. People like Mansa Musa, people like Jaja Ofopobo from Nigeria, who was one of the biggest palm oil farmers, who traded palm oil to the extent that he was cutting out the British middleman, bought his own ships to take his own product to Liverpool, and then the Queen got so annoyed that they decided to arrest him and put him in exile. Those are stories of successes of black farmers. And right now, any child who thinks that black people can't farm, they just need to understand that in Ghana, they produce Ghana and Ivory Coast produce 80% of the world's cocoa. Cocoa makes the most prestigious food or treat called chocolate. It comes from black farmers in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. And the question is, so if they can do that, if they can control an entire market and industry, why can't we? The coffee, Arabica, coming from Ethiopia, the best coffee in the world. So we need those stories to be told to make young people start to understand that African produce, African agriculture is some of the finest in the world. And once we get to do that, and that's why I also don't like this notion when people say Zimbabwe was the breadbasket of Africa. It's a nonsense. There were countries like Nigeria, countries like Kenya. I'm telling you, it's a nonsense. Countries like Egypt have been producing and outproducing Zimbabwe for ages. They say that Zimbabwe was a breadbasket because it was one of the last countries to be colonized by white people, and they try to give that title because they're trying to give all the credit to the white people that were farming in. I mean, if cocoa is produced at the rate it is produced in Cote d'Ivoire, how then does Zimbabwe beat that? Do you understand? Tea in Kenya, coffee in Ethiopia, and wheat and cotton from Egypt. We've been doing it on the African continent. People do it better. Right now, Malawi is one of the best producers of agricultural produce. Some of the best agricultural produce that I sell here in South Africa comes from Malawi. So we need to get the narrative straight for young people all across Africa to be motivated to want to farm.
And it's also healthy. I mean, not only healthy in terms of the consumption, but also in terms of sport. Imagine when we start retiring at the age of 60s and 70s, what would be the next thing to do, particularly for the diaspora with all the tiredness and everything? Isn't agriculture the best way to revamp your spirit of sport, doing some kind of things relating to nature?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the aspect of being off the grid. We're going into an era where a lot of cities are going to be bombarded with radio waves of 5G. We're going into an era where AI is going to be ubiquitous. And remember, artificial intelligence, computers, robots, drones, they're going to be ubiquitous in the cities. And those people that are going to have peace are the people that are going to be on the land. People who are living off the grid. People are not going to be dependent on services being provided by the government. So people on farms who've got solar, people on farms who are going to have wells, who are going to have boreholes, they're going to be the most independent people in the era that we're going to. If people are going to be forced to be vaccinated to go to the shops, forced to be vaccinated to get work, forced to be vaccinated to travel within the cities, the people who are going to survive that are people that have got land, are people that are not going to be dependent on a shop or a grid. And I don't know if there's any healthier way to survive than to produce your own food. Because most of us right now, we don't know what is in our food. I had a client yesterday, bought some meat. When they bought some meat, as they were packing the meat at home, he called me. He says to me, listen, there's writing and ink on my meat. What is all that about? And I said, well, it's the legislation of the country. I can't slaughter, kill, cut, and sell you a carcass of an animal that is not inspected by the government and stamped by ink. Yes, they say that the ink is edible, it is not, but these are the same people that say that meat that has got vaccines and steroids is also healthy. Can we trust them? But if I don't want to eat meat with a stamp, it means that I have to produce my own meat. If I don't want to sell meat with a stamp and without a stamp and get arrested, it means we have to be in villages where we can kill a cow, sell it to each other, or share it without being arrested. If you want to exchange seeds without being asked, where is your license to trade these seeds? Same thing. So these are the issues that are going to force us to go back to the land. Because if we don't go back to the land, we're going to be living in this colonial system that our leaders have maintained by maintaining colonial laws that were not put here for any other reason, but to give whites a monopoly of our labor, our land, and our ability to produce.
Rutendo, let's just get into how do you see the political agenda in terms of even agriculture? I mean, when I talk about the political agenda, we know that there are vocational trainings. I mean, how would you imagine that we start training the young people to like agriculture? Do they have to go through the curriculum changes, or how do you anticipate that to happen?
The current curriculum that exists, agricultural curriculum that exists, is a colonial agricultural curriculum. And it is a colonial agricultural curriculum that is always influenced by the Rothschild-Rockefeller complex that created agribusiness at Harvard, which will teach people how to use chemicals and patented seeds to produce food. So that is the biggest danger that we have with the current education system in agriculture in most African countries. The laws that are being used to govern agriculture, so to govern seeds, to govern the breeding of seeds, the breeding of animals, and the classification of our seeds, where they say that some seeds are strategic, or they're strategic seeds that must be regulated and can only be traded by people that have a license. All those were created by the colonizer. They were created by the colonizer to ingrain their food systems and to make farming a science that costs money to exclude Africans. It was also made a science that is going to take away seeds that reproduce from us to make us dependent on patented seeds. So these two systems must be fixed first. We need to change the laws that we're using in Africa to produce seeds. We need to allow organic seeds that reproduce to come back, so that farming is not about agribusiness that is about making money for corporations, but farming becomes a means for Africans to feed themselves. And then as a secondary benefit, to make money for themselves by something that can sustainably reproduce. We also need a science, an agricultural education that is based on agroecology. Right now, the kind of farming that we look at is a monoculture. We grow one crop, we grow it intensively or extensively. We use chemicals and fertilizers which destroy the soils. We use a lot of water, and then we destroy the ecosystem and environment with the chemicals that we're using. And then by so doing, we have to become more dependent on more chemicals. We have become more dependent on buying seeds every year, because the seeds that we are using do not grow. What that does is it destroys the ability of a farmer to farm. Farmers are not industries of producing food. They are industries of improving food quality while maintaining biodiversity. Farmers are actually the first doctor who gives you medicinal food to give you health and prevention of disease, gives you immunity. Now our farmers no longer do that. The farmer no longer improves his seeds. He doesn't select his seeds. He doesn't naturally select his seeds to pick the best seeds with the best qualities for what it is that he wants to develop. A farmer can no longer determine that I want a seed that resists this disease and that disease. So at the end of the season, after a certain disease has ravaged most of the crops, the ones that are left behind are the ones that he selectively takes and breeds again. It is already built in that disease resistance. And then he breeds it again for other qualities and traits. That doesn't happen anymore. And so if we're going to change the education system of agriculture, those are the things that we've got to change. And that means throwing away the current blueprint of agriculture. And that current blueprint of agriculture that looks at monocultures also looks at growing seeds and foods that are not African. We need to bring back African foods. We need to bring back foods that worked with Africa when we traded even with the Arabs and the Indians, because they gave us food that suited our lifestyle of living. Right now, this maize that many people are crazy about, it destroys our soil quality. It is a very thirsty and a very voracious crop that takes away nutrients from the soil. And so if you're not going to crop rotate with a bean or a legume that is going to put nitrogen into the soil, if you're not going to rotate it or intercrop it with something that is a tuber that holds the soil, you're going to destroy your soils very quickly. And that's why a lot of soils in countries that grow maize have been drastically destroyed. So we need a re-education. And we need to go back to agroecology. And agroecology goes against everything that is being taught in our agricultural schools. Agricultural schools tell you that you need to grow a maize crop intensively so that you can get the most yield per hectare. But traditional agroecology tells us that you need to intercrop. You need to grow tubers together with maize, together with creepers, together with, because the creepers close the ground, they stop weeds from growing. The tubers hold the soil together, and then your beans put nitrogen into the soil. You grow them together and you build food sufficiency for the family because you've got more than one crop. When one crop fails because of climatic issues, another crop will live. Weeds don't become an issue. Some of the crops become a deterrent to pests. Some of the crops become a fertilizer for the others. So this kind of agriculture is totally antithetical to the teachings of intensive profit-based agriculture. So this is what as Africans we need to start doing. That while you're a farmer, you are no longer just a maize farmer. You're a maize farmer producing sweet potatoes, producing beans, but you're not producing them separately, you're producing them together. And we are being told that yields are higher then. And the evidence within that is a story I once told you before, that in the 1700s, when the economists started trying to create capitalism, they were struggling because people were self-sufficient. They had enough food. And when they started analyzing how it is that people were self-sufficient, they realized that people could use 1/17 of a hectare to produce enough food to feed the family for a year and to make a surplus by selling. I mean, 1/17 of it's actually 1/17 of an acre, not a hectare. Do you understand? Families of 6 could feed themselves off 1/17 of an acre. Today, most families will struggle to feed themselves on a hectare. So we lost something back in the day. And guess what? Back at that time in the 1700s, in Europe, they were intercropping. And so this intercropping was producing enough of a yield from 1/17 of a hectare to feed a family of 6. So there was something that was so productive, because they would say that if it was potatoes, 1/17 of a hectare could produce anything up to, a hectare could produce anything up to 70 tons of potato. Now, today we don't produce that much from potatoes.
And I just have the urge to bring my mom on this show. Unfortunately, she's only going to speak in Meta, in the language that I know, because exactly what you're saying is how I grew up like a child. I saw the mixed cultivation, and in just one farming, you could produce different crops on it. But now, did you even think that we had that? And there was a season to even harvest the other one and the other one. So the soil was just producing a lot at the same time. There was beans, there was yam, there was even peanuts, there was sweet potatoes, there was, and you could mix all that in just one farming circle. And I mean, how much more can Africa bless its own with our soil? How much riches that we have there?
Yeah. And now we are destroying those soils, because when we put maize every season in the same soil, maize, it just sucks out the nutrition from the soil. But when you're intercropping, when you're putting the crops together, it actually builds in the fertility. The living bacteria, living creatures in the soil are what gives it its health. They're what making it a living organism. But we are killing that organism in the name of science. And this science that we keep calling science has got no efficacy to it. We do not have this science based on numbers. We do not have this science based on experimentation to say, are we producing more or less than before? And that is our biggest problem. So we need to stop that and start again. And we need to relook at whether we need our own science in Africa, or we're going to keep, utilizing the European science that continues to destroy nature much more than fortifying and improving nature.
Wow, thank you so very much. I'm going to open up the lines and so that Rutendo can take some water and seep something. So if you have a question or a comment or a contribution on this topic, agriculture, I know in the next couple of minutes we're going to be talking about how the political situation influences to or promotes to deteriorate even the sector. They don't have any agenda on it. No policies have been put in place, to actually promote agriculture or agribusinesses on the continent. We see how they sideline even the African farmers, and they give, the land to foreigners, and they sell our soil and everything. I mean, what kind of a country would do that if they had a policy in place that would promote Wait,
Afternoon, my sister.
were you just waiting?
You know I had to call it today. Brother Rutendo, how are you?
I'm great, my brother. How are you?
Okay, you let me say who I am so you would know who it is. This is Glendon.
How are you, bro?
Brother, I mean, what you're saying is phenomenal. Everything you're saying is things I have grown up as a young person practicing. I remember as a young person, when we planted corn, they would always plant peas, pigeon peas, with the corn,
Yes.
and they would grow together. Now, one would bear before the other, but the soil would remain fertile for the next season, and every year would be doing basically the same thing. So everything you're saying is things I've grown up knowing, but for some reason, we kind of lost it. I don't know what happened. I am so elated right now, Rutendo. I'm telling you, you need to be on my team because everything you tell me, basically it's a reminder, but I would love it. And having your expertise there's no way I can go wrong. There's no way I can go wrong. So I just sent you a message via WhatsApp. Respond.
Okay, bro.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you guys very much. You are wonderful. Rutendo, you're a champion, man. Stay doing what you're doing, and we're gonna win this. We're gonna win this battle. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so very much too. Yeah. Rutendo, there is this tendency that a lot is going to the Gambia. Do you have that impression, like Gambia? I don't know what's happening there. I mean, in terms of even farming and agriculture, like how did it even happen that they don't have the kind of seeds that Glendon needs from you all the way from South Africa? So they're not people or farmers that around the Gambians that could do that.
No, no. I think it's actually important to state that Southern Africa consumes more maize than any other part of Africa. So if you remember in Cameroon, in Nigeria, you guys eat yam, you guys eat fufu, samolina. You don't eat maize as much as we do here in Southern Africa. And that's not necessarily bad.
All right.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. So that's one of the reasons why Glendon would need maize to come from Southern Africa for his chickens, if that's what he wants to feed.
Okay. Yeah. Hello. There's a caller. Let's just take some. Hello.
Yeah. This Alfred from Kenya.
Hey, Alfred. Welcome to the show. Are you a farmer?
Yeah, I'm a farmer.
Oh, great. Yes.
And let me not use Alfred. Let me use Masira because Alfred, that's a foreign word name.
Masira.
Yeah, Masira is my name now.
Right. So tell us, what is your contribution? You've been following up the conversation with Rutendo. Yeah.
So what I want to.
Please, there's a call coming in from the UK. Call using our WhatsApp, please, because you would slot the brother. You just cut him off. So just give us some time and we'll pick up all your calls that are coming in. Okay. Thank you. Hello?
Hello, you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead now.
Yeah, I was saying about our traditional food.
What about that?
So with the traditional food, okay, I'm professionally a doctor. So people with diabetes, they are advised to take, yellow maize.
Yes.
Yellow maize, they have the lowest content of sugar levels. So that's what they are advised to take. So like we are trying to do away with those foreign crops and the mode of agriculture, because the yellow maize, they mature very fast and they are healthy. So it's a yellow beans, yellow maize with the flour. Those are what we are encouraging, and I think it's a good direction to take.
Are you a nutritionist or what kind of health sector are you involved in, Masira?
I'm involved in ophthalmology, but in an health field, you have to get almost everything, so that you are not that bad. You can at least, like I have, my parents are diabetic. One is hypertension, so I know what they take, and I should be advising them.
Wow. I mean, that's also another topic that we're going to be having Dr. Arikana on Saturday talking with his team, and they're really going to be talking about food and health. And I think this is very important. If you would join also our team with Rutendo to advise on sectors like that. Can I contact you after the show?
It's right.
Okay, Masira. So we catch up after the show as we're putting this agri team together. Rutendo is out to make agriculture the most sexiest and hottest trend on the continent. Keep in touch. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, Rutendo. Hi, Dr. Susan.
Oh.
Hello, Floyd. Yeah.
Rutendo. It's always a joy to listen to you speak and talk and the knowledge you are telling to Afra. Like what you just said about the agriculture. I know it from Malawi, by the way. So I'm trying to get myself into agriculture too. I'm setting up things. So yeah, like you said, this is exactly the things we grew up. Like my father, I remember planting like peanuts together with the maize and then with the beans and peas. We were all growing up together. This was the kind of farming it was. We had a farm like somewhere there. So all you're talking about is exactly the things that we normally know. I know how farming it has been, but I think as you said, we lost track somewhere, so which is we need to go back to the old ways. See, so anyway, I didn't want to take much of your time. I just said keep up the good work, Dr. Susan. Keep up the good work. Are you doing very job?
Thank you.
It's always a joy to listen to you. What happened to Rutendo? You have a YouTube channel. You don't put up any more videos on it.
No, he has to be here on the Pan-African. He's working on the Pan-African Daily TV, and Rutendo has just no time to be putting videos. He say it's more here.
Okay, that's very good. That's very good.
Rutendo, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. You explain why your videos are not coming up there anymore, or as usual. Let's just take these calls. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
I got a question for Rutendo, more like a statement. I want him to expand on it.
Okay.
I think Europe is planning to ride the coattails of Africa's rise because Africa's population is rising. So that is a huge consumer base, and the Europeans plan to attach themselves to us. That's why you see they have first rights of refusal with this Africa Free Trade Agreement. Africa is supposed to trade with them. The Africa is directly supposed to trade with them. If Africans trade with them, not as one front, that means Europeans can have what they do. Obviously, we're waiting to see if Europe disintegrates first, then that's a benefit to us. But if Europe stays united, then that is a problem for Africa. So I think they're planning to sustain the development by riding the coattails of Africa's rising population. Can Rutendo just expand on that? Because it's very, very scary situation. It seems Europeans will never leave us. It seems they will never leave us. What is the next solution for Black people globally in order for us to win? In order for us to win, what can we do to have a competitive edge against European businesses, foreign businesses, Chinese businesses in Africa? What can we do? That's my question. Can you just expand a bit more on that? It's not more of a question. It's just I want his opinion on it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Over to you, Rutendo.
Okay. Wow, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily an economist, but I think he is right that Europe is trying to cultivate Africa for its benefit. And this has been the case. I think I've said it many times before here, that when we had the first development of a policy called the Doctrine of Discovery in 1454, that is when Europeans decided that they needed to exploit Africa and the New World. So it's not only Africa that decided to exploit, they decided to exploit anywhere that was not Europe and anywhere where non-Christians lived. That is what the Doctrine of Discovery was. It created a law that was called the Law of Nations, which is very much similar to what we consider as international law today. Mm-hmm. There are still countries in this world that still live under the Doctrine of Discovery. America lives under the Doctrine of Discovery. Australia lives under the Doctrine of Discovery. Most of Africa and the Caribbeans, where the Queen is still the head of state, those are countries that are living under the Doctrine of Discovery. And even countries like Zimbabwe, where they have decided that they are going to take their own land, they get put under sanctions because what the Europeans are saying is that the land and resources of Zimbabwe are still ours, according to the Doctrine of Discovery. And that is why they hated Mugabe, because he broke the Doctrine of Discovery, and he said that native peoples have the right of expropriation of their own land, and the right of preemption, because what it is that was taken is the right of preemption, where the whites said when they went into the New World, the land is unoccupied, it is terra nullius, because there are no people, there are no civilized people. However, we will give the natives the right to live on their land as natives, but they don't have a right to sell the resources or anything on that land to anyone without our authority. And if you understand that law that starts in 1454, you will understand why we are still having the fight we're having today. Because in Europe, they had finished their resources by 1400s. They were having endless wars. Their gold and their most precious metals were finished. And they needed new places because they were getting overpopulated in Europe that they were going to expand to. And that's why you've got half of Europe in America, Australia, and New Zealand. And so today, we are not going to end this voracious appetite of the European to exploit our resources and to exploit our labor. And finally, where they have acquired our resources and our labor, they will still want to take the few cents that are left in our hands, the few peanuts that they pay us as wages. They want to take that by marketing their products to us. So the question is, how do we stop that from happening? And I think I've raised an alarm when I heard Paul Kagame being a champion of this free Africa trade. And my question was, how does Paul Kagame become the champion of Africa free trade when he is an asset of the United States, when he is trained at Fort Leavenworth to serve US interests as a Trojan horse or as a United States military man on the continent? And I did raise the issue that if he is going to be a champion of Africa free trade area, is he the kind of person that's going to be advancing Africa's interest or Europe's interest or America's interest? And I feel right now, when I read the framework for this Africa free trade area, it was very vague. They're still to make the policies. They're still to have another meeting that is going to talk about the policies. The council itself is headed by a South African. And that worries me because South Africa itself has not been able to emancipate itself economically for it to now have a South African sitting at the head of Africa Free Trade Area Council, hoping to lead Africa to trade with Africans in a manner that can break neocolonialism. When it's a South African, he comes from a country that hasn't broken neocolonialism. And a country that is still controlled by very powerful countries like companies like Anglo America, Old Mutual, and Rothschild institutions that could pay anybody to undertake the interests of those people. So it worries me. And I think that we need to create the rules, the frameworks, and the regulations of this free trade area as quickly as possible to find out which direction it's supposed to take. And when you look at what happened in the AU with the imposition of FARC, when you have a person like FARC being imposed on Africans, you ask yourself, what is the point? What is FARC supposed to drive on the African continent that they have decided to put in there? And when you look at the trends with everything else, AFRICOM, putting more bases on Africa. 36 countries have got AFRICOM. The French colonies have already got French bases. Some countries are already having Chinese bases. And the question we have to ask ourselves is that, how then can we have a free trade area when we've got other armies occupying our soils? Because when an army is sitting on your soil, like I said, Germany has got the United States on its soil. It's got AFRICOM based in Germany. You ask yourself, is Germany a country or a colony? There's 50,000 soldiers in Japan. Is Japan a colony or is it a free country? So if Africa has got 36 countries that have got AFRICOM on them, if there is a new, what they call the new Silk Road, which is the strategy of the United States government to ensure that every single African capital is accessible within 3 hours. The question is, can we have free trade with the American army sitting over us? Who are they protecting, these American armies? Because generally the West put their armies where they are protecting their interests. They put their armies where they are protecting their citizens. So when they've got these armies on our continent, which interests are they protecting? And I suspect it has something to do with the companies that are going to come to try and take advantage of this free trade area by coming to develop the infrastructure and the logistics channels that they will need to protect with their armies. How do we deal with them? Is this what this gentleman asked? We need to expel these armies from the African continent. People like the Ghanaian president who was saying that it's time to say goodbye to the EU, to the United States and China. Yet he signed an agreement with the Americans to have an American base in Ghana, to have American soldiers in Ghana who are not accountable to the Ghanaian government. We also understand that right now Kagame has just signed a secret agreement with the United States for them to also have their soldiers on Rwandan soil. We need these leaders to stop that if they are truly committed to Africa Free Trade. Because Africa Free Trade, when you read the document and its preamble, it says it is supposed to ensure that there's going to be free trade in Africa and there's going to be a unity of African countries and an ability for Africans to travel throughout Africa without any borders. How can that happen when we've got US soldiers on certain soils that have made agreements with the Americans? How can I open my borders to a country that has got an American base? How can Zimbabwe open its borders to Botswana here that has got an American base, yet the Americans have got sanctions on Zimbabwe? And Botswana is a member of what we call the SADC organ, in which countries in the SADC organ have taken a commitment to stand together and to fight any foreign invasion on any member of SADC. So how do we unite and take down our borders when your government or your country has got American soldiers that I don't want on my soil? So we need to fix those. And we need to make sure that every country in Africa refuses this occupation, cancels their contracts of these occupations, and then we begin to unite as African countries to create our own army. We need to unite as African countries to tap into our spirituality, as I keep saying, that our secret is not in the physical, it is in the spiritual. And the spiritual is not Christianity or Islam. It is the same spirituality with which we defeated Europeans before they succeeded with colonialism. I come from the Mutapa Empire, as I said, and wars were fought with the Portuguese in the between 1670 and 1690. The Portuguese were defeated. And it is said that they were defeated by things that today don't make sense to us, but they made sense to our ancestors then because they were tapped into other things that we are no longer tapped into. Not only were the Portuguese defeated by the Mutapa Empire, they were defeated by what we call the Lundu kings of Malawi, very feared by the Portuguese. That these people were able to tell the Portuguese that when you trade with us, you stay at the beach, you stay at port, we will bring you the gold, we will bring you the ivory, you don't come inland. The Portuguese were also defeated in Cape Town by the Khoisan. These Khoisan that people now try to pretend like they were defeated by Bantu people, they were very strong people. 1485, the Bartholomew Diaz landed at Cape Town. He tried to establish an establishment, what they used to call a padrao. They tried to plant that padrao that was going to say that Portugal has discovered South Africa. The Khoisan fought him. He ran away. Vasco da Gama came. Vasco da Gama tried to do the same thing. He failed. Eventually, in 1509, a guy called de Almeida, who was a military man who had just gone conquering India, came and on his way back to Portugal, tried to finish what it is that Bartholomew Diaz failed to do in 1485. He tried to do what it is that Vasco da Gama failed to do in 1496. And then he tried to establish this discovery of South Africa. The Khoisan fought him. 60 of his men died. De Almeida himself died there. And that was the last time the Portuguese tried to settle there. Now, ask yourself, what is it that these guys had to defeat the Portuguese? How could they defeat them like that? They had something superior that we have lost along the way as we became colonized.
That green.
And the question is, what is? Yeah?
And so they had Grigri.
And Annie, let me just say something on that point. When you speak to liberation fighters of Zimbabwe, and I keep talking about the liberation fighters of Zimbabwe because they're some of the people who fought some of the most successful liberation wars against Rhodesians, ex-South Africans, Portuguese people from Mozambique, and mercenaries that came from Europe, 15,000 of them, that bolstered this army that was supposed to stop black rule in Zimbabwe. When you speak to some of them, especially people who are ministers today, they tell you that some of the stories of the Liberation War, we cannot tell you because they sound like fiction. Mm-hmm. We had incidences in which we would be cornered. And when cornered in a corner, a lion would appear from nowhere. And in my culture, a lion is known as Mondoro. And it's known as a spirit medium and a spirit guide. It would come, this lion, and it would walk through a cave or a boulder of granite, and they would follow. They'll be instructed to follow these lions by their spirit mediums, because every single detachment of guerrillas that were fighting for liberation had a spirit medium to guide them on spiritual issues. Mm-hmm. And they say that they would be able to walk through rock, they would walk into caves, come out from the other side, and when they look back, those Rhodesians had been killed. Until today, white people have got so much to say about the liberation struggle, but there's many things they can't write about because it gives us a clue into what is the power that our ancestors had, that they have fought so hard to destroy by detaching us from our culture. So I thought I would just put that out there. I was raised a Christian, and so for me to be saying some of the things I'm saying to you are not easy, but they come from reputable sources who say the same stories over again, to say we saw things in the bush that did not make sense in the scientific world. Some of them were very educated lawyers, doctors, who are telling these stories. To say in the bush, everything that we called science went out the window because we saw miracles, literally. We would be dying of hunger while walking with supplies because there had to be logistics lines carrying guns and bombs and bullets on their backs. And they'll say that at a time when we're starving and almost passing out, a plate of food would appear, they would eat, they would leave, and it was, I've got a book I'm reading now that talks about this, the war of Zimbabwe, from the angle of spirit mediums and the spiritual angle. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
And that's what we need to do.
Where can we get that book, Rutendo? This is amazing.
I wish I had it down here so that I could have shown you. I will show it to you on my.
Rutendo, you're coming next week, so please bring it. Bring that book, and if it is available.
It's unbelievable. And what is interesting about it is it's actually written by a white man. A white man who went through the villages of Zimbabwe after the war to understand the spiritual angle. And now ask yourself, where did he get the notion that there was another dimension to the war other than guns and military strategy? And I would assume that because of the defeat of the Rhodesians and these mercenaries, and there were people who spoke. And like I said to you last time, the 15,000 mercenaries I speak about, many of them were coming from British royalty that was American, had officers who were in Vietnam. Those very same. The book is here. It's coming down. Let me show it to you.
Yeah, I wanted to say, tell Sister Christy to bring it down.
No, it's not the one. It's not the one. Give me the other one. Sorry. Yes. Sorry, it's gonna come. So this white guy. Also, so I was saying, so the Zimbabwean liberation fighters fought people were coming from Vietnam, but the people that were coming from Vietnam were not just normal soldiers. Mm-hmm. They were royalty. Yes. No, please bring it down. Don't throw it. So they were royalty. They had roots with English royalty, and those roots with English royalty were the ones that pushed them into the military arena to protect what it is that European culture protects. And while they were doing that, where's the book? Oh yeah. So while they were doing that, their officers that came to Zimbabwe, these ex-Marines, ex-Green Berets, were the people who, when they saw these things that happened in the battlefield, as people that came from royalty, as people that came from aristocratic families, they had an interest to try and research and find out what happened on those battlefields. And that's where writers like this guy, his name is Beach. You see that?
Wait, Rutendo, I can't see. Wait.
No, this is not the same. This is not the right book, man. It's still not the right book. Sorry. I have so many books. So it's not the right book. So it's coming. Don't worry. So those people who have royal links, and royalty in Europe is spiritually inclined, are the ones that spoke about the power of what defeated them. And that's why I say to you that when people see sanctions on Zimbabwe today, when people see this focus on Zimbabwe and the United States government and its senior officials saying that Zimbabwe is an enemy of the United States, and everybody can't understand, it is because of what happened on the battlefield, that which defeated the Europeans, that which goes beyond, right, eventually. Okay, can you read that?
Wait.
It says guns, rain.
All right, they're bringing it.
Guns. It says guns, rain, guerrillas, and spirit mediums of Zimbabwe. And it was written. And it was written by David Lan. That face there.
Yes.
That face there is the face of a spirit medium. This book, my sister, this book will tell you some of the most amazing things that happened in Zimbabwean battlefields. It'll tell you some crazy stuff. And you can tell that even the writer is holding back a lot of secrets because they don't want us to really know the truths.
Absolutely.
But stuff happened. And what excites me is that when a lot of these guerrillas were attached to a spirit medium to guide them into the war. The spirit medium was usually an elderly woman, a woman who did not eat, who only ate twice a week, a woman who ate specific foods, a woman who wore gold, pure gold, and sometimes copper. That's what our culture used to be all about. Those special foods that they were eating, I want to know, what food would these people eat to keep them alive for a week without eating? What kind of special foods were they eating to make them old and take them into old age? And what special foods gave them the powers of some of the things that are spoken about in this book that they used to do?
Wow.
And those secrets are the secrets of how it is that we're going to protect Africa. We will never protect Africa with science and doing the physical orientation. And I keep saying to Africans, the definition of science is no. It's a Latin word. It's a Latin word in which the methodology of science was said to be a hypothesis, theory, which you experiment, test, and then using observation, you come up with a conclusion to try and understand the physical world. But the weakness of science is science only deals with what it can observe, that which is physical, and that which can be explained. Science does not deal with the supernatural. Science does not deal with other dimensions of life and dimensions of this world.
Absolutely.
And that extra dimension, so the Europeans have mastered science. They've mastered the physical. We need to go back into the unseen and the dimensions that have been ignored by science, because that's where the secret is. And they know that. They know that.
Wow. Talking about that, I'm going to pick up this call. Stephen, just hold on. But talking about that, we are having Kojo on Thursday, and exactly that's the topic that we want to talk about: the spirituality of, and we call it the science of African spirituality, and how this is going to be the game changer by knowing that we cannot physical war, but the spiritual war is very important, and that is not the mastery of our colonial masters. That is really only for us. All right, I'm picking up the call. Hello. Can you unmute, Stephen? You muted. All right.
Sorry.
Hello.
I just didn't want to. Hello.
Yes.
Greetings to you and Dr. Rutendo, or Mr. Rutendo, I should say. I was listening avidly for the early part, and then I tried to call, and then I was kind of hearing intermittent. But nonetheless, my question to Mr. Rutendo is this. We were speaking earlier about the fact that the seats being licensed, right? And also about the fact of the government having to bow down to the colonials. On the seed issue, who gave anyone the right to patent nature? I think under either the Geneva Convention or the United Nations, it's forbidden for that to be done. Also, in relation to government having to be bow down to what the WHO or other agencies are telling them to do. Under the sovereignty law, if I'm not mistaken, it says that any sovereign country has the right to determine what laws they legislate to their sovereignty, to their people. That means that on the basis of sovereignty, no one can tell you what to do. So if we have, for the reference of COVID, we have vervine, we have different elements of nature that we can use that we know, literally know, cures this COVID situation. And we are told by numerous doctors, professionals, biologists, and other scientific masters, that this so-called pandemic is the greatest con of all times. So how come our governments are so afraid to legislate for our people? We, our people, do not need chemicals that have a concoction of mercury, aluminium, and other alien substances that we know is going to either cause paralysis or some other kind of ailment to our people. Why can't our governments legislate and say to the foundations of the WHO and the Gates that we have our own cure, and therefore you may use your cure for your people, and let our people use the methods that they choose? If our people are foolish enough to choose death over life, meaning choose pharmaceuticals over herbs and nature, then that is their choice. Everyone has a right of choice. At least that's what the United Nations say. That's what the what do you call this? The people that legislation for liberties and rights. Yeah, that's what they say. So then, why aren't we allowed to make the same decisions that other nation states in Europe can do? I'll listen and hear what you're saying. I'm staying on the line in case I need to a question.
Okay.
Right. Thanks, sis. He's very right that there are universal laws. The Universal Human Rights Declaration has brought up some laws like ICESPR, and those give us a Bill of Human Rights that we are supposed to enjoy. Nations are supposed to have sovereignty. Nations are supposed to be free to use their resources the way they see fit. And human beings have inalienable human rights that are indivisible. And all this is ingrained in the UN Charter, which gave us the Human Rights Declaration, so that the UN Charter would be go hand in hand with human rights to avoid something to cause the Second World War or something similar to the Second World War. But unilateralism continues to happen with the Western powers that created these institutions, created these human rights, but for some reason, when it suits them, they forget these human rights and begin to push agendas that sometimes even totally disregard human rights. And I always say to Africans, as long as you are not standing up for your human rights, as long as you are not going to find a way or a recourse to enforce your human rights will always be seen as secondary to the human rights of others. And hence, we've had so many discussions about sanctions in Zimbabwe and saying that those sanctions are a violation of human rights. And as long as Zimbabweans are not standing up, as long as Africans are not standing up, African humanity will always be second class. That is the same thing he's bringing up now, that we should have a right to determine how our nations should be run. We should have a right to determine what it is that we use as nations for our medicines. But the problem that happens is that our nations signed this charter that gives us these rights. They signed these human rights treaties that gives us these rights. But they also go and they sign secondary treaties and agreements like the World Trade Organization agreements, World Health Organization agreements, GATT agreements that go hand in hand with the World Trade Organization, which create new laws that the West then use to abrogate the previous ones. And what we keep saying to our leaders is that any law that goes against human rights, any law that then tries to contravene or abrogate the rights that every nation has to respect human rights is illegal and it is voidable. But our leaders don't listen. Then there are leaders with personal interests. They are offered monies, they are offered incentives to take care of themselves on a personal level, that they agree to agreements that are unconscionable. They agree to agreements that are not logical. He also asked who has the right to patent seeds. The same question goes as to who has the right to patent viruses. These Western countries, their companies are patenting viruses. They are getting patents for creations of nature. You can't create nature. And why they sometimes get patents for some of these things like genetically engineered foods is that they are no longer natural. A genetically engineered food is what we call horizontal integration, where you begin to breed species that are not associated and that will never breed naturally in nature, and you use artificial systems, you use fusion systems that break barriers of species and cells in order to create genetically modified foods. Those are no longer natural. That's why they are patented. They are synthetic. That's why they are patented. They also patent hybrids because they say that the way that they breed these hybrids and the number of hybrids that they bring together sometimes and the means by which they bring them together warrants an addition of innovation or technology that is not found in nature. So that's why they then want these protections. So we are saying as Africans, we have to stay away from those synthetic and artificial ways that the Europeans do things in order to mimic God, in order to be God. Because when you tamper with something you did not create, which is nature, they did not create nature. They did not create the blueprint to nature, so they don't understand everything and how nature works. And because they use science, which is about observation, which is about the known, they then tamper with natural things without understanding the unseen and the unknown, which then bring consequences that we sometimes have to struggle with. These genetically modified foods are causing allergies. They are mixing animal genetics to food genetics. That can't be right. And the consequences for that are things that we are beginning to see as repercussions in cancers, repercussions in autoimmune diseases, and all these are the non-communicable problems that we see. He then asked to say, what must our governments do? Our governments must stop signing international conventions that they don't understand. Our governments must stop signing World Trade Organization agreements that they don't understand just because they've got the love of money and the love of international trade. International trade has not benefited Africa as much as it has benefited the West. So why do we keep signing these agreements that we don't understand, agreements that were not made for us, agreements that were made for the West? These laws, these seeds that say that a person must have a license to develop seeds. A person must have a license to sell seeds. All this is nonsense because African farmers have been producing seeds for generations. And those people that are proponents of destroying this patentization of seeds are saying seeds have been improved over time by farmers for over 1,000 years and thousands of years. How is it that today Monsanto or Seedco in Africa can then come, take seeds that have been developed by people for thousands of years, mix them up, interbreed them, and then all of a sudden come and say they've got a hybrid that they must be paid money for? It is obviously an appropriation of nature that shouldn't be permitted. So Africa must stop signing these agreements. They should cancel the existing agreements. And I think we need to start afresh. And that starting afresh means this exploitative objectification of nature for it to be appropriated and owned by individuals needs to stop.
Got him, Stephen?
Yes, I'm hearing. I'm hearing. You see, the thing is, as for the leaders of Africa, we know that African minds are the most brilliant globally. Why do I say that? Because most of the technology that we're using today, most of the manufacturing equipment that we're using today has been developed by African minds, even though they were stolen from us. We know, okay? Why is it that so many of our students go abroad to study? Not only do they go abroad to study, but they qualify. We are the most qualified nation in the world. But yet, our African heads of state see fit not to allow those same brilliant minds that they sent abroad to qualify to come back to Africa and at least even, okay, if you don't want to hand over the power straight away because you think, because they're green or they're young, they're new, whatever terminology you want to put to it, okay, let them be your advisors because you are the past and they are the present, which means they are the first step to the future. Why don't you allow them to be your advisors if you don't want to put the power in their hands? Show them how the ropes go. The only reason you would not want to do that is because you have something to hide. So my question would be to our leadership, and I hope I don't exclude myself from being able to step foot on the motherland for this, but I say, what have you got to hide? What is it that you're trying to stop us from seeing that you're doing that is wrong? Because that's the only the reason, in my mind's eye, why you would even think to say, okay, we're not going to let our brilliant scholars, male and female, come back from diaspora where we sent them in the first place because we said they were uneducated, which was the reason why they couldn't step into parliament. So now that they've become educated and fully competent, as well as worldly and mature, now you're suddenly finding a different reason to stop them from helping you to even read through the contracts of agreement that is causing us Africans globally such disparagement, disdain, and suffraging. Why?
Okay. Okay.
Sis, I just want to attend to that very quickly.
Yes.
Stephen is wrong. Stephen is wrong when he says that young African leaders or young African Western educated Africans are not being given the opportunity to roll out their knowledge on the African continent. That's actually contrary. When agrobusiness was created in Harvard in 1954, it was created by a man who came from a Rockefeller foundation. And he went into Harvard to create a program of agribusiness that was targeted at penetrating the world with agrobusiness technology or biotech technology. They wanted to make agriculture a science, and a science based on American products that had been left over from the Second World War, like Agent Orange. They wanted to use those chemicals. They wanted to use the chemicals from companies like AG Farben and the company that manufactured the Zyklon B that was used to kill the Jews by the Germans. They had created such amazing technologies with chemicals that they wanted to have commercial use for them because initially they'd been manufactured for the destruction of human life. So when they now wanted to look for a use for them, and a lot of these chemicals, by the way, came from petrochemical industries that were controlled by the Rockefellers, they then started coming up with pesticides and herbicides, and that is exactly where glyphosate and this thing called Roundup came from. And that's where those chemicals came into agriculture. And to spread this agriculture, the Rockefellers created what is called the greening revolution. And they started the greening revolution in Southern America. Then they went to Asia, and eventually now the greening revolution through Agra is now in Africa.
Yeah.
And the agenda of the greening revolution is to sell American chemicals and to sell American seeds that the very same Rockefeller institutions that built themselves from a monopoly on oil have found a way to monopolize seeds. And their strategy was this: we go to African countries and recruit their brightest minds and give them scholarships to come to the United States. We recruit African minds to come into our institutions of higher learning to be taught how to use these chemicals, to use monoculture, and to use hybrid seeds and Western seeds to be productive in agriculture. These are the very same people, because before our countries got independence, who also came and gave scholarships to the brightest African minds to go and study economics that would teach African economists how to economize African resources and ensure that those economized African resources are put into the hands of Western countries so that we then receive paper money to buy more goods that are finished by the same Europeans. It's these very same young Africans who became our ministers. Same Africans became our finance ministers. In Zimbabwe right now, we've got a typical person like this sitting in our finance ministry. And all of a sudden, after negative publicity on Zimbabwe for the past 20 years, we're hearing people like Bloomberg and Reuters beginning to compliment Zimbabwean policies because of this sellout that works in our Ministry of Finance called Mthuli Ncube. He is a Rothschild protege. He's created by the Rothschild to come and bring neoliberalism that again brings colonial economics to our nation and our country. So it's not true that young Africans are not given opportunity and young Africans who are educated in the West are not given opportunity. They are the reason Africa is in the situation it is, because they have come and they've implemented colonial policies that serve Europe, that make sure that our resources can be extracted at the cheapest possible cost. Those resources are then put onto railways to the port. From the port, they go to Europe. Europeans then process those goods and services and then give us finished goods, and we are then a market again. So that's the problem. The economists who are making us sign World Trade Organization treaties that give us these laws of controlling seeds, patenting seeds, are put in by young economists, young lawyers, and people who are educated in the West. The people that continued to propagate Roman Dutch law, English law, American law on the African continent, who gave us constitutions like the one that's in South Africa that maintained apartheid, are people educated in the West. When South Africa got independence, and Nelson Mandela came out and he was talking about nationalization, he was talking about the redistribution strategy. He was taken together with a lot of South African liberation stalwarts. They were taken to the West. They were taken into institutions for management training programs. They were taught on public finance management systems. And when they came back from these training sessions, when they came from the Harvards, when they came from the Cornells, they came back and they threw away the policy of redistribution and they took on something totally different. And this is what I say is the problem with getting people that get trained by your oppressor to come and give you systems that can only rebuild oppression and nothing else.
Wow. Whew. Hello. I'm just gonna pick one and we're done for today. Hello.
Yes, good day, good evening, whatever time it is over there, Dr. Tata and Rutendo.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, what I have to say is not long. It's about what he's saying is perfectly right. He's correct on every point that he makes towards what is going on. And I give thanks, I bow my head to him for coming out and speak all these things for the world to hear of it. So I give thanks and congratulate what he's saying. The thing that I want to say, on Africa, with His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie, he spoke about the African and the life of Africa. Africa will never be free until all Africans can stand and speak as free beings in the eyes of man, as we all are in the eyes of the Almighty. So, African leaders and Rutendo, I bless you for coming out. And Dr. Tata, keep up the good work, and you are blessed and stay strong.
Thank you very much, bro. Thank you so much.
My name is Theo.
I know. You're already on our track still. I know it. Thank you so much. You're the one always calling to bless us and everything that we're doing. I think that was a very a perfect closing remark before I give it over to Rutendo to round up. Rutendo, what is it that we should be expecting on your program? I mean, you're coming on next week again with Noma. What is it that you expect from this case study from Noma that we are going to learn about?
Well, the very first thing that I would like, I'm expecting for us to discuss with Norma is to discuss what farming is. How farming is a central activity in Africa, and it is the central pivot of any economy in the world, not just the African economy, and it is critical for the sustenance of a nation and peace in a nation for a nation to be food self-sufficient. And Norma, being a very successful farmer herself, I would like her to come here and talk about how it is that you start in farming, how it is that you can get land, how then you can get finance. Because many people like Norma did not start with money, but they started with land. They created partnerships to get other people to join them for them to start farming. They got other people to bring their resources, their skill, their knowledge, and to transfer that knowledge for Norma, sorry, for Norma to be farming as successfully as she is doing today. But the very first thing that Norma had to do, which many Zimbabweans have failed to do, is to embrace the land reform program that took place in Zimbabwe. ZANU-PF decided to take land because they realized that they lost many lives, 60,000 lives in a war for land. And so when the time came, they ensured that they gave that land to the people. Many Zimbabweans did not embrace that. Many Zimbabweans were enemies of the land. Norma will come and explain how it is that the land reform was the greatest thing that ever happened to Zimbabweans, because they got given real wealth and a real legacy and inheritance for them to be able to succeed going forward. You know that there are countries like Rome. Till today, the Italians hold their land, and they've prospered Italy because of control of that land. Romans went and fought for land. They were looking for more land. The Europeans came to Africa for land. It prospered the Rhodesians. It prospers the white South Africans. They don't want to leave Africa today because they prospered. We now need Black Africans to be told that that land is actually the wealth they need, not a job, not employment, not a loan. You actually need land. And then Norma is also going to teach us how to successfully farm. I still have a lot of discussions that I have with Norma in trying to also transform her into this agroecology and to make that agroecology as successful as the commercial style farming that Norma is currently doing. Because Norma is producing 400 hectares of maize. She then goes on to do 50 hectares of beans. That is remarkable. But what we need to do is do it sustainably. And then I hope to show people products when we get the time. So for instance, we talk a lot about seeds. This is a bag of seeds. And many people don't realize what it is. You understand? And here it comes with a label that talks about, it comes with an approval from the government that says that the seed has been inspected to show that it is the variety of seeds that is said to be. If it is said to be an heirloom seed, if it is said to be an organic seed, the word organic is wrong, actually. If it is said to be an open pollinated variety seed, then it is that and certified by the government. I don't agree with this certification, but a lot of people are liars. They will sell you a seed that is not what they say it is. So we need that level of certification. And these are the things that I want to teach people as we go forward. And I want to encourage people to use these seeds that reproduce, to use these seeds that are good to nature, and to use these seeds that will teach our farmers once again to improve their seeds. You know, where we're going into the future, no one knows. And when we get to a time where the same people that are asking us to wear masks, the same people that are making laws for our governments, who then force our governments to follow rules that go against humanity sometimes, when they decide that they're not going to give us their seeds anymore, when they decide that if you're not vaccinated, you can't buy, we want people to have the self-sufficiency to feed themselves. And that is why I'm on this battle of teaching Africans to buy seeds that can reproduce, because there will come a time where the same people that say that you can't fly if you're not vaccinated might decide that you cannot buy food if you're not vaccinated. If that day comes, I would like every African to have a capacity to produce their own food without needing to beg. If one day comes and the blockchain says we will not sell seeds to people we do not like or people who do not have the right social score, let you have seeds, animals, chickens, cows to produce everything you need. And let you have the land that allows you to get trees or whatever you need to build your house. This is what I pray for on African continent. And this is the self-sufficiency that I feel we need to start building, because the cities we live in one day will become unlivable and we need to be prepared.
Wow. Rutendo, we can no longer be more than grateful for this session with you, and we look forward to get you a Noma. And for those of you that just hearing, just keep that name, because it's a household name for agriculture, transformational agriculture on the continent in this generation that we're talking about. Noma is a powerful sister. I mean, you only talk to her, you feel the vibration. And talking with her was already too much privilege for me. And we're setting up these concepts together to say the more land we own and buy, the more we're going to invest, into agriculture. And that's already one big sector of the ADDI, as Dr. Arikana was talking about. Imagine, I look only in my own country. I just did a short research talking to the population in Douala, not even in the region where I come from, and just cassava. Cassava is the one of the most expensive, and people go buy land, put hotels, put this and all that junk, and just getting a land there. Anyone who wants to invest in Cameroon in this sector in cassava, please reach out to me, because I'm already on that journey of having also a piece there to build up this sector in cassava. It is the most expensive cash crop right now there, and the land is just fertile for such things. So yes, we are looking to get all this sector occupied by the diaspora, also by the continental Africans, to keep this education. So please make it a date with us, Rutendo, Noma, and myself. I'm just happy to be part of this club. And if you are interested to be a member of this club, it's good. Rutendo is still coming up with that name. Rutendo, what do you say we're going to call it? Have you even come up with a name?
I haven't come up with a name, and I want to say Susan, that let Africans not miss this huge boom that is taking place. I see what's happening in Zimbabwe. I see what's happening in Malawi. In fact, Malawi motivates me more than anything else. Those guys are doing amazing things. I buy my cassava from Malawi, by the way. Africans don't miss this movement. There is a movement happening. Africans are investing in farming. Africans are putting their money behind people that know how to farm, and their product is going all over the world. Chinese need food, they will never run out of it. Africa needs food, will never run out of it. South Africa needs non-genetically modified foods and organic food. And I'm saying, gear yourself up for this Africa free trade area, because when the time comes, people are going to make money.
Yes.
Africa imports $38 billion of food every single year. That is an African market. We can become rich. Let's have a percentage of that 38 billion, and let's grow it. Because once people are making money on the continent, more is going to be needed and the market is going to grow. Let's be smart, guys. Invest. And then, so those of us, when we bring people like Noma, if you want to know how you can be part and parcel of that, oh my God, I'm so sorry, guys. If you want to know how to be a part and parcel of that, connect with young farmers that are in these countries all across Africa who need financing. We will get structures in place to ensure that your financing is going to be managed appropriately. Let's grow this continent.
So we just call it the Noma Club.
We will get a name. We will get a name, and the name will be appropriate.
I can't wait. Rutendo, we talked about, I mean, before we leave, we are all also leaving now. What date? Are we talking about Thursday next week or what? Because Joshua, I think I want to get Joshua tomorrow as soon as possible because he is already scheduled for Friday. But because of the AU stuff, we want to have a lot of talk and discussion about it. So which date do you think that we can already set a date? I discussed with Norma. He said, talk to Rutendo tonight. Or you want
Yeah,
to?
with Norma, the problem that Norma has is she's on a farm. So because she's on a farm, her network is not good. So
Exactly.
when we decide that excuse me, when we decide on a date, Norma needs to travel from the farm to a house in town so that we can have this communication. So I think Thursday or Friday, I will confirm with Norma, and then you can then let everybody know when
Okay.
and how we're going to do the show.
All right. Okay. Thank you so very much, bro. Thank you for your time and your energy.
Thank you.
Taking out this time to liberate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Good night. Oh,
Thank you. Good night. All right.
did I just forget to pick up Tracy? Trace, I'm sorry. I don't know. I kept you on the hold and then I realized that I just bounced it on it. Anyways, tomorrow is another day. And if you did not succeed to get your call through, I'm so sorry. I must apologize. But there was just too much information that we need to tap out from Rutendo. It's not very easy to always have him here. Kofi, thank you for connecting with us. And I want to thank every other person, El Hadi, David Collins, and Doreen Boogie, Kobeka Sauce, who just came in also. Ano, thank you so much. Soto Warrior. Thank you, Stephen. I saw you, Lingola. Yeah, I mean, it's just a tradition here in the house that when we stay for a week or a couple of 2 days without meeting each other, it's always a privilege for us to see ourselves again. So please don't be surprised when I take just 5 minutes or 2 minutes, to connect with you because you are all part of what is happening. I mean, every guest and followers, subscribers, likes, shares, and everything that we produce here in 2 hours every day from Tuesday to Saturday, you're just phenomenal. So we like I usually say, the whole team it comprises of the followers, the viewers that you are is the main team. That's the compound, as we say. Then we have our guest, like Rutendo, that was up today, special guest. I am the babysitter in the house. Then we have the callers, like the brothers that we're just calling, even just to bless us. And then we have those that are on the chat and those that are commenting, and so it's a whole package on the Pan African Daily TV. We cannot just be more than grateful to ourselves. I'm not thanking any other person, I'm thanking all of us. And I hope you also are having the same feeling. So I want to thank you for coming, Hazel, Eugene, Stefan, Abito. You just have your names, Aji, Sylvia, I don't know, all of you out there, and also watching with us on Facebook. From my own Facebook account, we have just a lot. And I know those that usually would follow us on Facebook and those that are watching from the continent, and sometimes it's really late out there that they can't follow. So Yadi Yadi was watching here, Zazu Robert and Tracy Girl Queen was watching here, Yemo Odwa was also watching here, Caroline Mendy, Pascal Okinambe Agua, and all the others. I know there were a lot watching here, but most of them have gone to bed because they're watching from the continent. And on the continent now, it's almost midnight in East Africa countries and the others. So we're really late. But I thank you also. And watching on the Pan African Daily TV, we also have, I think, a number of them, but I'm not connected. Patrick would give us that statistic. So we want to thank you so much on this first day. Tomorrow, I want to get Joshua. Joshua is already planned for Friday. But because of the happenings of Sunday's election, last Sunday's election, we want to get a feedback because I saw Joshua is launching a petition out there on that election. So let us get the inside, what he thinks, hold a conversation on that, because right now it's as if the ball is almost, though they're elected, people see on their opinion to say what they think about it. And come to think about it, it's 4 years that we're going to go into this process. So what is it that we want to collectively, together with this new body, move forward on the parameters that we are building the Africa that works for Africa collectively. So it is an interesting conversation. I would confirm if we would have Joshua tomorrow instead of Friday, but if not, then we'll still have a guest. But the topic tomorrow should be on the AU elections and the way forward. What is the feedback about it? What is it that we can now say, okay, they're now in office, so let's come together, put our heads together and see where we can strengthen each other. We're going to continue to complain, to call on them, to throw out, what we think that is right. The voices would always grow louder and louder. Yeah. So if that's the case, you would get the flyers on. If not, then we are going to get another guest that will be with us. On Thursday, we have Kojo that is going to be with us and to talk to us about ways to actually start getting into the spirituality that we're talking about, not just doing he has practically showed how these things work, but people who really want to engage and say, I want to go on a spiritual journey, I need some guidelines, where should I start, what is it that I need? Exactly, just like Rutendo is saying, most of our discussions have just been on just knowing the topics, hearing it for the first time, being conscious of that. But now I think we're getting closer to the point where we start say, okay, now you've heard enough of this. And now do you want to move this step? This is the steps to follow. Yeah, so this guidance is very important and is coming up on Thursday. Friday, like I said, was scheduled for Joshua. We can have him twice. If we don't get him tomorrow, we'll get him on Friday. Saturday, we have the team A, the team ADDI, and His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Arikana is coming with another powerful team. I can already tell you because the flyer just landed on our desk this evening. And if I can get it, that will be very important for us to just know who is it that would be sitting on that conversation with her. And as usual, there were a lot of feedbacks from last conversation and people still want to get engaged, like the Addis Bank that was looking for investors. And we finally reached out also to the director of that bank if he will be on the show to give more information on who can invest in what sectors. Us on the Pan-African Daily TV, we're already a partner to that bank and putting our shares there out, So yes, there are just too much opportunities, countless opportunities that are available for us, the diaspora. It is the right time for us to grab that opportunity. Don't miss any single show on the Pan-African Daily TV this week to Saturday, and then we go our break and start again. Okay, if you're interested to be a guest, I know there are a lot of people who are complaining, Susan, our mails don't get through or stuff like that. Please, they're just a lot. So keep reminding us. Use our WhatsApp. It's the most easiest way to get to Naisha. Naisha put in front of us all these packages that we're seeing, all the guests, and sometimes there's some guests that just come in last minute. Okay, there's always space, so do not give up. Another program that we want to say to support the Pan-African Daily TV is we are looking now for sponsors and partners, not only for the conversation but also advertisers. Okay, we have our stream set up in such a professional way so we can take your sponsorship. If you're interested to be a sponsor or a partner or advertise with us, please just send us, your email, your contact through the Pan-African Daily TV at gmail.com, or just text us and we will get back to you. So I think that was it for today. And I want to thank us for being here. We're going to see ourselves again tomorrow. And thank you for all those that are sharing. Immediately we drop our flyers, you share it. We're not reaching out to everybody because we are done with this collective and then putting into groups, because most people in this WhatsApp groups don't pay attention to even the daily programs that are going on there. So what we do is just share and share and share. So if you have a flyer, please just share it among each and everyone that you have in your own groups or in your community to be on the program. Thank you once more. We see ourselves tomorrow, and good night. Stay safe out there. Bye-bye.